There is a strange kind of emptiness that does not come from being alone, but from feeling like your life has no direction. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive like a storm. It comes quietly, like a slow fog rolling across a field. You wake up one morning, and nothing feels particularly wrong. Your room looks the same. Your phone still buzzes with notifications. Your routine is still waiting for you, but something inside you feels off. There is no excitement, no sense of purpose, no clarity about where your life is heading, and somewhere in the background of your thoughts, a simple question begins to echo. What am I doing with my life? You may not say it out loud. You may not even admit it to yourself, but the feeling lingers. It appears when you scroll through social media and see people your age, achieving things you haven't. It appears when someone asks you about your plans for the future and you give a vague, uncertain answer. It appears late at night, when the noise of the world fades and your thoughts finally have space to speak, and in those quiet moments you realize something uncomfortable. You feel lost. This feeling is more common than most people admit. It does not matter how old you are. Teenagers feel it when they are pressured to choose a career before they even understand themselves. Young adults feel it when the reality of work and responsibility does not match their expectations. Even people in their 40s or 50s can feel lost when they suddenly question the life they have built. The feeling is universal, because it comes from something deeply human, the search for meaning. The Stoics, ancient philosophers from Greece and Rome, understood this feeling very well. They lived in a world without smartphones, social media, or modern distractions. Yet they still wrote about confusion, anxiety, and the sense of being lost. But unlike many people today, they did not see this feeling as a problem to escape. They saw it as a signal that something in your thinking had drifted away from reality. According to the Stoics, feeling lost is not caused by the world around you. It is caused by the gap between what you expect life to be and what life actually is. When you believe life should follow a certain path, and it does not, confusion begins. When you think success will bring happiness, and it does not, your mind starts searching for answers. From a young age, most people are given a script for how life is supposed to unfold. This script is not written in a book, but it is repeated so often that it becomes part of your thinking. Study hard, get good grades, choose a stable career, earn money, get married, buy a house, have children, retire, be happy. It sounds simple. It sounds logical. And because everyone around you repeats this script, you begin to believe it is the only way life can work. But the Stoics would challenge this assumption. They would ask a simple but powerful question. Who told you this path leads to happiness? Most people never stop to ask this question. They simply follow the script, step by step, because it feels safe. It feels familiar. It feels expected. Imagine a young person choosing a career. They may have interests, passions, or talents, but instead of exploring those things, they choose a profession that looks impressive or secure. They become a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, or an accountant, not because they love it, but because it seems like the right choice. For a while it works. They earn respect. They earn money. They feel like they are moving forward. But then something strange happens. Despite the achievements, despite the stability, despite the approval of others, they still feel empty. They wake up each morning with a quiet sense of dread. They count the hours until the day ends. They wonder why success does not feel the way they thought it would. This is the moment when many people realize they have been living someone else's life. They followed the script, but the script did not belong to them. And because of that, they begin to feel lost. The Stoics believe that much of human suffering comes from this exact problem. People chase goals they never truly chose. They pursue approval instead of purpose. They build lives based on expectations instead of values. And when those lives fail to satisfy them, they do not know why. It is like wearing someone else's shoes. You may still be able to walk, but every step feels uncomfortable. You cannot run freely. You cannot move naturally. Something always feels slightly wrong. Another reason people feel lost, according to the Stoics, is because they attach their self-worth to things outside their control. These things are what the Stoics called externals. Externals include money, status, beauty, fame, career success, and even the opinions of other people. These are things you can influence, but you can never fully control. You can work hard, but you cannot guarantee success. You can treat people kindly, but you cannot guarantee they will like you. You can plan carefully, but you cannot control every outcome. Modern life encourages you to build your identity around these externals. You are told that your value is measured by your achievements, your income, your appearance, or your popularity. When you believe this, your happiness becomes fragile. It depends on things that can change at any moment. Imagine building a house on sand. At first, everything may seem stable. The walls are strong, the roof is secure, and the structure looks beautiful. But the foundation is unstable. Every wave shifts the sand beneath it. Every storm weakens the structure, no matter how carefully you build. The ground beneath it is unreliable. This is what happens when your self-worth is built on externals. You constantly worry about losing what you have. You constantly compare yourself to others. You constantly feel like you are not enough. And over time, this constant tension creates a deeper emotional state, the feeling of being lost. You may start asking questions like, what if I never succeed? Or what if I am not good enough? Or what if everyone else is moving forward while I am standing still? These questions create anxiety, and that anxiety slowly turns into confusion. The Stoics offered a simple but powerful solution. They said that while many things are outside your control, there is one thing that always remains within it. Your character, your thoughts, your choices, and your actions belong to you. They cannot be taken away by luck, fate, or other people. This idea is known as the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to you, and some things are not. When you focus your energy on what is not up to you, you feel anxious and powerless. But when you focus on what is up to you, you begin to feel stable and grounded. If you cannot control whether you succeed, you can still control whether you try your best. If you cannot control how others treat you, you can still control how you respond. If you cannot control the future, you can still control what you do today. When your attention returns to these simple truths, life becomes clearer. If you stop chasing outcomes and you start shaping your character, and when your character becomes your compass, the feeling of being lost begins to fade. But in the modern world, this is not easy. You are surrounded by distractions. Every moment of silence can be filled with a screen. Every uncomfortable thought can be avoided with entertainment. You can scroll endlessly, watch videos for hours, and never give your mind the chance to slow down. At first, distraction feels like relief. It helps you forget your worries. It gives you a break from reality. But over time, it creates a deeper problem. When you constantly distract yourself, you never ask the important questions. What do I really care about? What kind of person do I want to become? What truly matters in my life? Without these questions, life becomes directionless. You move from one distraction to another, one day to the next, without a clear sense of purpose. And when you drift long enough, you begin to feel lost. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that people look for peace in quiet places by the sea, in the mountains, or in the countryside, but he believed the best retreat was within your own mind. If you cannot sit quietly with your own thoughts, no place in the world will make you feel at peace. This is why feeling lost is not always a bad thing. It is often the first sign that your mind is waking up. It is a signal that something in your life needs attention. It is a reminder that you have been drifting, and it is time to choose a direction. But choosing a direction does not mean you need a perfect plan. It does not mean you need to know exactly where your life will end up. The Stoics did not believe in perfect plans. They believed in strong character. Instead of asking, where should my life go, they would ask, what kind of person should I be today? Should you be honest today? Yes. Should you be kind today? Yes. Should you be disciplined today? Yes. Should you do your best, even if the outcome is uncertain? Yes. When you live this way, something interesting happens. Your life begins to take shape, not according to some grand plan, but according to your values. And when your life is guided by your values, the feeling of being lost begins to disappear. Because a person who lives with integrity, courage, and wisdom is never truly lost. Even if the road ahead is unclear, they carry their direction within them. As you grow older, the feeling of being lost rarely comes from a single dramatic event. it usually comes from something quieter. It builds slowly, over time, as your expectations begin to clash with reality. You start to notice that life does not feel the way you thought it would. The things you once believed would make you happy do not seem as satisfying as you imagined, and the direction you assumed your life would take now feels uncertain. One of the main reasons this happens is because of the way modern society defines success. From a young age, you are surrounded by messages that tell you what a successful life looks like. You see it in advertisements, in movies, in social media, and in the expectations of people around you. Success is presented as a collection of visible achievements: a high-paying job, a beautiful house, a luxurious car, an attractive partner, a large group of friends, and a life that appears exciting and impressive from the outside. At first, these images seem harmless. They give you something to aim for. They create motivation. But over time, they begin to shape your understanding of what life is supposed to be. Without even realizing it, you start measuring your worth against these images. You begin to believe that if you can just reach those milestones, you will finally feel satisfied. The Stoics would say that this is where the problem begins, because these images of success are built almost entirely on externals. They depend on things outside your control, and when your sense of direction depends on things you cannot fully control, confusion is inevitable. Imagine someone who spends years chasing a high-paying career. They work long hours. They sacrifice their health, their relationships, and their peace of mind. Eventually, they reach their goal. They get the promotion. They earn the salary they dreamed of. From the outside, it looks like success, but internally something feels strange. The excitement fades quickly. The satisfaction is temporary, and soon a new goal appears. A bigger house, a higher position, more recognition. The finish line keeps moving, and no matter how much they achieve, they never feel like they have truly arrived. This is what the Stoics warned about. When your happiness depends on external achievements, it becomes a moving target. You are always chasing something just out of reach, and over time, this endless chase creates exhaustion. That exhaustion often turns into the feeling of being lost. Because deep down, you begin to question the path you are on. You start to wonder if you are running towards something meaningful, or just running because everyone else is. Social media has intensified this problem. In the past, people compared themselves to a small group of neighbors, co-workers, or classmates. Today, you compare yourself to thousands of people every day. You see their best moments, their biggest achievements, their happiest experiences, all presented in carefully edited images and videos. You see someone your age traveling the world, someone else starting a successful business, someone else getting married, someone else buying their dream home, and slowly, a quiet thought begins to grow in your mind. Everyone else is moving forward. Why am I still stuck? But what you are seeing is not reality. It is a highlight reel. You are comparing your full, unedited life to someone else's carefully selected moments, and no one can win that comparison. The Stoics believed that comparison was one of the most dangerous habits of the human mind. It pulls your attention away from your own life and directs it toward the lives of others. Instead of asking, "Am I becoming a better person?" you start asking, "Am I ahead of them?" And this question has no satisfying answer, because there will always be someone who appears more successful, more attractive, more talented, or more accomplished. No matter how far you go, someone else will seem further ahead. This creates a constant sense of inadequacy. You begin to feel like you are behind in life, even if you are doing reasonably well. You start to doubt your choices. You start to question your path, and over time that doubt turns into confusion. The Stoics would remind you that every person has a different path. Each person has different talents, different challenges, different opportunities, and different timing. Comparing your life to someone else's is like comparing a tree to a bird. The bird can fly, but it cannot grow roots. The tree can grow tall and strong, but it cannot soar through the sky. Each has its own nature. Your task is not to become someone else. Your task is to become the best version of yourself, and that journey cannot be measured by someone else's timeline. Another reason modern success creates confusion is because it focuses almost entirely on outcomes, not character. You are praised for what you achieve, not for who you are. You are rewarded for results, not for effort or integrity. A person who earns a lot of money is admired, even if they are dishonest or selfish. A person who becomes famous is celebrated, even if their character is weak. Meanwhile, someone who lives quietly with honesty, kindness, and discipline may receive little recognition. The Stoics believed this was a fundamental mistake. They argued that the only true measure of a person's life is their character, not their wealth, not their status, not their achievements, only their character. According to them, a person who lives with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline is successful, regardless of their circumstances. And a person who lacks these virtues is unsuccessful, even if they appear impressive from the outside. This idea is difficult to accept in a world that constantly celebrates external success, but it offers a powerful source of stability, because character is something you can control. You may not control your income, your reputation, or your opportunities, but you always control your actions and your choices. When your sense of direction comes from your character instead of your achievements, life becomes simpler. You no longer need to chase every opportunity or compare yourself to every person. You only need to ask one question. Am I acting with virtue? If the answer is yes, you are moving in the right direction, no matter where you are. Modern life also creates confusion by offering too many choices. In the past, people's lives were shaped by necessity. They often followed the same profession as their parents. Their roles in society were clearly defined. Their paths were limited, but they were also clear. Today you have more freedom than ever before. You can choose your career, your lifestyle, your beliefs, and even your identity. On the surface, this seems like a good thing, and in many ways it is. But unlimited choice also creates a new kind of pressure. When there are endless possibilities, every decision feels heavier. You start to wonder if you are choosing the right path. You worry about missing out on better opportunities. You question whether you are living up to your potential. This is sometimes called the paradox of choice. When you have too many options, you become less satisfied with the one you choose, because you are always thinking about the paths you did not take. The Stoics approached life differently. They did not focus on finding the perfect path. They focused on walking whatever path they were on with virtue. They believed that no matter what your circumstances were, you could still live with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. This meant that your situation did not determine your value. Your character did. A slave could be virtuous. A king could be corrupt. A poor person could live with dignity. A rich person could live with greed. External conditions did not define a person's worth. This idea was deeply comforting, because it meant you did not need the perfect career, the perfect relationship, or the perfect life to feel fulfilled. You only needed to focus on your character. When you shift your attention from outcomes to character, something changes. The pressure begins to lift. You stop worrying about whether you are ahead or behind. You stop chasing every opportunity. You stop comparing your life to others. Instead, you focus on simple, meaningful questions. Am I being honest? Am I treating others with respect? Am I doing my best, even when it is difficult? Am I acting with discipline and reason? These questions give your life direction, even when the future is uncertain, because the Stoics did not believe that clarity came from knowing the future. They believed clarity came from knowing your values. When your values are clear, your actions become clear. And when your actions are clear, the feeling of being lost begins to fade. You may not know exactly where your life is heading. You may not have a perfect plan, but if you know what kind of person you are trying to be, you always have a direction. And sometimes, that is all you need. There was a time in human history when silence was unavoidable. When the sun went down, the world grew quiet. There were no glowing screens, no endless notifications, no streams of information flowing into the mind every second. A person had no choice but to sit with their thoughts. They walked long distances without entertainment. They worked with their hands in silence. They looked at the sky, the land, and the people around them, and in those quiet moments they faced themselves. Today, that silence is almost gone. The moment you wake up, your hand reaches for your phone. Before your feet touch the ground, your mind is already filled with messages, videos, headlines, and opinions. Every empty space in your day can be filled with something. Music in your ears while you walk, videos while you eat, social media while you wait, messages while you rest. The modern world has made distraction effortless. At first, distraction feels like relief. It helps you escape boredom. It gives you something to do when you feel uncomfortable. It provides a constant stream of novelty, humor, and excitement. But over time, constant distraction begins to take something important away from you. It takes away your ability to sit quietly with your own thoughts. And when you lose that ability, you also lose your sense of direction. The Stoics believed that a distracted mind is an unhappy mind, not because distraction is evil, but because it prevents self-examination. It keeps you on the surface of your own life. You move from one activity to another, one piece of content to the next, without ever asking deeper questions. What do I truly value? What kind of person do I want to become? What matters most in my life? What am I avoiding? What am I afraid of? These questions are uncomfortable. They require honesty. They require stillness. And in a world full of distractions, stillness has become rare. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his private journal that people search for peace in quiet places by the sea, in the mountains, or in the countryside. But he said that the best retreat is within your own mind. He believed that if you cannot find peace inside yourself, no place in the world will make you feel calm. But today, many people are afraid of being alone with their thoughts. Silence feels uncomfortable. Boredom feels unbearable. So they reach for their phones, their screens, their entertainment. And slowly, their inner voice becomes quieter and quieter. When your inner voice grows quiet, your sense of direction fades, because direction does not come from external noise, it comes from internal clarity. Imagine a ship in the middle of the ocean. If the captain constantly listens to the voices of every other ship, every passing wave, and every changing wind, he will become confused. He will lose his sense of direction. But if he trusts his compass, he will always know where he is going. Your mind is like that compass, but distraction pulls your attention away from it. It fills your thoughts with other people's opinions, other people's lives, and other people's goals. And when your mind is full of other people's voices, you cannot hear your own. This is one of the deepest reasons people feel lost today. They are surrounded by information, but they lack wisdom. They are constantly stimulated, but rarely reflective. They know what is happening in the world, but they do not know what is happening inside themselves. The Stoics believed that self-knowledge was the foundation of a meaningful life. Without it, you are like a traveler without a map. You move forward, but you do not know where you are going. You follow the crowd, but you do not know why. Distraction also creates another problem. It shortens your attention span. It trains your mind to seek constant stimulation. When you are used to fast, exciting content, slower and more meaningful activities begin to feel boring. Reading a book feels difficult. Having a deep conversation feels tiring. Working on a long-term goal feels frustrating. Your mind becomes addicted to quick rewards. And when life does not provide those quick rewards, you feel restless and unsatisfied. The Stoics warned against this kind of mental dependence. They believed that a strong mind was one that could remain calm and focused, even in silence. They practiced exercises that trained their attention. They reflected on their actions each day. They wrote in journals. They spent time thinking about their values and their behavior. To them, this was not a luxury. It was a necessity. Because without reflection, life becomes directionless. Another way distraction makes you feel lost is by creating the illusion of progress. You can spend hours watching motivational videos, reading self-help content, or learning about new ideas. And while some of this can be useful, it can also become a form of passive consumption. You feel like you are improving because you are learning new things. But if you are not applying those lessons to your life, nothing really changes. You stay in the same place, just with more information in your head. The Stoics believed that philosophy was not meant to be studied for entertainment. It was meant to be lived. They were not interested in complicated theories or endless debates. They wanted practical wisdom that could guide their daily actions. Epictetus, one of the most famous Stoic teachers, once said that you should not explain your philosophy. You should embody it. Your actions should speak louder than your words. In today's world, it is easy to fall into the trap of thinking instead of doing. You can plan your future endlessly. You can research different paths. You can imagine different versions of your life. But if you never take action, those thoughts become a kind of paralysis. You start to feel stuck. And that feeling of being stuck turns into the feeling of being lost. The Stoics believe that clarity comes from action, not just thought. When you act with virtue, even in small ways, your path becomes clearer. You do not need to know your entire future. You only need to know the next right action. Another hidden effect of distraction is that it disconnects you from the present moment. Your mind is always somewhere else, thinking about the past, worrying about the future, scrolling through someone else's life, watching someone else's experiences. But your life is not happening in the past or the future. It is happening right now. And when your attention is constantly elsewhere, you begin to feel disconnected from your own existence. The Stoics placed great importance on the present moment. They believed that the present was the only thing you truly possessed. The past was gone. The future was uncertain. Only the present was real. When you focus on the present moment, life becomes simpler. You stop worrying about things that have not happened yet. You stop regretting things you cannot change. You focus on what you can do right now. And right now, you always have a choice. You can choose to act with honesty. You can choose to act with kindness. You can choose to act with discipline. These choices give your life direction, even in the smallest moments, but distraction pulls you away from these choices. It fills your mind with noise. It makes you forget what truly matters. This is why the Stoics valued solitude and reflection. They believed that time alone with your thoughts was not something to fear. It was something to cultivate. When you sit quietly and reflect on your life, you begin to see things more clearly. You notice your habits. You notice your fears. You notice the ways you have been drifting. And while this awareness can be uncomfortable, it is also powerful. Because once you see your life clearly, you can start to change it. Feeling lost is often the first step toward finding direction. It is a signal that something needs attention. It is your mind telling you that the path you are on does not align with your values. But if you drown that signal in distraction, you never hear it. You never pause long enough to ask what needs to change. And so the feeling of being lost continues. The Stoic answer to this problem is simple, but not easy. Create space for silence. Create space for reflection. Step away from constant distraction. Even for a short time each day. Sit with your thoughts. Ask yourself honest questions. Reflect on your actions. Think about the kind of person you want to become. This practice does not give you instant answers, but over time it gives you something more valuable than answers. It gives you clarity. And clarity is the opposite of feeling lost, because when your mind becomes clear, your direction begins to emerge naturally. Not from the noise of the world, but from the quiet strength of your own character. At some point in life, almost everyone begins to search for certainty. You want to know that the path you're walking will lead somewhere meaningful. You want to know that your efforts will pay off, that your relationships will last, that your decisions will not lead you into regret. This desire for certainty is natural. The human mind wants stability. It wants predictability. It wants to feel safe. But the Stoics believed that this desire, when taken too far, becomes one of the main reasons people feel lost. Because life does not offer certainty. It never has, and it never will. You can choose a career and still fail. You can love someone and still lose them. You can plan carefully and still face unexpected problems. No matter how intelligent, careful, or hardworking you are, the future will always contain uncertainty. Yet many people build their entire sense of direction on the idea that the future must be predictable. They tell themselves, I will feel secure once I know exactly where my life is going, but that moment rarely arrives. Even when one problem is solved, another appears. Even when one goal is achieved, a new uncertainty replaces it. This creates a constant feeling of instability. You keep waiting for the moment when everything becomes clear and secure, but life does not work that way. And as you wait, you begin to feel lost, because the certainty you are searching for never fully comes. The Stoics took a different approach. Instead of resisting uncertainty, they accepted it. They believed that uncertainty was not something to fear, but something to prepare for. They trained their minds to face change, loss, and difficulty without panic. One of the exercises they practiced was called negative visualization. This involved imagining the loss of things they valued. They imagined losing their possessions, their status, their comfort, and even the people they loved. At first, this may sound dark or pessimistic, but for the Stoics, it was a source of strength. By imagining loss, they reminded themselves of an important truth. Nothing in life is guaranteed. Everything is temporary. Every possession, every relationship, every achievement can change or disappear. But instead of making them anxious, this realization made them calmer. Because when you accept that nothing is permanent, you stop clinging so tightly. You stop building your happiness on fragile foundations. You become mentally prepared for change. And when you are prepared for change, uncertainty loses its power over you. Many people feel lost because they are waiting for perfect conditions before they act. They tell themselves, I'll start once I feel more confident, or I'll take that risk once I'm sure it will work, or I'll pursue my dream once everything is stable. But perfect conditions rarely exist. There is always some risk, some doubt, some uncertainty. If you wait for a future without uncertainty, you will wait forever. The Stoics believed that action should not depend on perfect outcomes. It should depend on virtue. You do not act because success is guaranteed. You act because it is the right thing to do. Imagine a person who wants to help others. They may not know if their efforts will succeed. They may face rejection, failure, or criticism. But if they act with kindness and justice, their actions are still meaningful, regardless of the outcome. This idea removes a huge burden from the mind. You no longer need to predict the future before taking action. You only need to ask one question. Is this the right thing to do? If the answer is yes, you move forward, even if the future is uncertain. Another reason uncertainty creates the feeling of being lost is the weight of choice. Modern life offers more options than any time in human history. You can choose from countless careers, lifestyles, beliefs, and paths. On the surface, this seems like freedom, and in many ways it is. But unlimited choice also creates pressure, because with every choice, you leave other possibilities behind. And the more options you have, the harder it becomes to decide. You may spend years wondering which career is the right one. You may question whether you chose the right partner. You may compare your life to alternative paths you could have taken. And this constant questioning creates anxiety. You begin to fear making the wrong choice. You worry that one decision could ruin your life. And because of this fear, you hesitate, you delay, you overthink, you become stuck. The Stoics did not believe in the idea of a perfect path. They did not think there was one single choice that would guarantee happiness. Instead, they believed that any path could become meaningful if you walked it with virtue. A farmer could live a meaningful life. A soldier could live a meaningful life. A merchant, a teacher, a ruler, or a servant could all live meaningful lives. What mattered was not the role itself, but the character of the person playing it. This idea is incredibly freeing, because it means you do not need to find the perfect path. You only need to choose a path and walk it with wisdom, courage, justice, and discipline. Your job does not have to be perfect. Your life does not have to be flawless. Your decisions do not have to guarantee success. What matters is how you act within those circumstances. When you understand this, the fear of making the wrong choice begins to fade, because no matter where you are, you can still live with virtue. And as long as you live with virtue, you are not truly lost. Another source of confusion is the fear of responsibility. Sometimes, the feeling of being lost is not caused by a lack of direction, but by a refusal to choose one. It is easier to say, I don't know what to do, than to choose a path and accept the risks that come with it. Because once you choose a direction, you also choose the possibility of failure. You choose the possibility of criticism. You choose the possibility of regret. Avoiding responsibility may feel safe in the short term, but over time it creates a deeper discomfort. You begin to feel like your life is drifting. You feel like you are not in control. And that drifting feeling is what many people describe as being lost. The Stoics believed that responsibility was the foundation of a meaningful life. You are responsible for your actions. You are responsible for your choices. You are responsible for your attitude. This may sound heavy at first, but it is actually empowering, because it means your life is not entirely controlled by circumstances. You always have some control. You always have the ability to choose your response. If something difficult happens, you can choose how to react. If you make a mistake, you can choose to learn from it. If you feel lost, you can choose to take a small step forward. Responsibility gives you agency, and agency gives you direction. Another powerful Stoic idea that helps with uncertainty is the concept of amor fati, which means love of fate. This does not mean you enjoy every painful event in your life. It means you accept whatever happens as part of your path. Instead of saying, "Why did this happen to me?" you say, "This is part of my journey. How can I respond with virtue?" You stop resisting reality. You stop wishing things were different. You start working with what you have. When you adopt this mindset, life becomes less frightening. The future is still uncertain, but it is no longer an enemy. It becomes something you are ready to face. You will realize that no matter what happens, you will respond with courage, wisdom, and integrity. And that realization brings a deep sense of calm, because the real source of direction is not the future. It is your character. A person with strong character is never truly lost. They may face uncertainty, but they know how to respond. They may encounter difficulty, but they know what kind of person they want to be. And that inner clarity is stronger than any external plan. When you stop searching for certainty and start building character, your life changes. You no longer wait for perfect conditions. You no longer fear every decision. You no longer feel paralyzed by uncertainty. Instead, you take the next step, and then the next, and then the next, not because you are sure of the outcome, but because you are sure of your values. And that is how the Stoics believed you move from confusion to clarity, not by controlling the future, but by mastering yourself. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a simple but powerful idea. The direction of your life does not come from the outside world. It comes from within you. Many people search for direction in careers, relationships, achievements, and plans. They believe that once they find the right job, the right partner, or the right opportunity, their confusion will disappear. But the Stoics believed this was a misunderstanding of how life works. External circumstances can influence your life, but they cannot give it meaning. Meaning comes from the way you think, the way you act, and the kind of person you choose to become. When you build your life around externals, you are always at the mercy of things you cannot control. But when you build your life around your character, you carry your direction with you wherever you go. This is why the Stoics placed so much importance on virtue. To them, virtue was not an abstract idea or a moral slogan. It was a practical guide for living. They believed that a good life was not defined by pleasure, wealth, or fame. It was defined by the consistent practice of 4 core virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. Wisdom meant understanding what truly matters and what does not. It meant seeing reality clearly, without illusions or false expectations. Courage meant facing fear, uncertainty, and difficulty without running away. Justice meant treating others with fairness, kindness, and respect. Self-discipline meant controlling your impulses and acting with reason instead of emotion. When your life is guided by these virtues, you no longer need a perfect plan. You no longer need constant reassurance about the future, because no matter where you are or what happens to you, you always know what the right action is. Imagine a person who lives by these principles. They wake up each morning with a simple goal: to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and discipline. They do not know exactly what the day will bring. They may face challenges, setbacks, or disappointments, but they are not afraid of these things, because their goal is not to control the outcome. Their goal is to control their actions. If something difficult happens, they respond with courage. If they face temptation, they respond with discipline. If someone treats them unfairly, they respond with justice. If they must make a decision, they respond with wisdom. This person may not have a perfect life. They may not be rich, famous, or admired by everyone, but they are not lost, because their direction comes from their character, not their circumstances. Many people today feel lost because they are waiting for clarity before they act. They want to know their purpose, their passion, or their ultimate goal. They want a clear vision of the future before they take the first step. But the Stoics believe that clarity comes from action, not from endless thinking. You do not discover your path by sitting still and waiting for inspiration. You discover it by living, by trying, by making mistakes, and by learning from them. Purpose is not something you find like a hidden treasure. It is something you build, day by day, through your actions. Imagine someone who feels lost and decides to start helping others in small ways. They volunteer their time. They support a friend in need. They act with kindness in their daily interactions. At first, these actions may seem small, but over time they create a sense of meaning. They create a sense of direction. The person begins to feel useful. They begin to feel connected to something larger than themselves. And slowly, the feeling of being lost begins to fade. This is because meaning is not found in grand achievements. It is found in the way you live each day. The Stoics also believed that remembering death could help you find direction in life. This idea, known as memento mori, was not meant to be depressing. It was meant to be clarifying. When you remember that your time is limited, many of your worries lose their power. You stop obsessing over small inconveniences. You stop delaying the things that truly matter. You stop chasing goals that do not align with your values. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. This was not a threat. It was a reminder that time is precious, and that every moment is an opportunity to live with virtue. When you understand that your life is finite, you begin to focus on what truly matters. You focus on your relationships. You focus on your character. You focus on using your time wisely. And when your priorities become clear, the feeling of being lost begins to fade. Another important Stoic idea is acceptance. Many people feel lost because they are constantly resisting reality. They wish their lives were different. They wish their circumstances were better. They wish the past had turned out another way. But the Stoics believed that resisting reality only creates more suffering. You cannot change the past. You cannot control every aspect of the present. And you cannot predict the future. What you can do is accept what is happening and choose your response. This is where true freedom lies. Not in controlling the world, but in controlling yourself. Not in shaping every outcome, but in shaping your character. When you accept reality as it is, you stop wasting energy on frustration and regret. You focus on what you can do, right here and now, and that focus gives you a sense of direction. The Stoics did not promise a life without confusion or difficulty. They knew that life was unpredictable. They knew that people would face loss, failure, and uncertainty. But they also believed that a person who lived with virtue could face these challenges without feeling lost. Because direction does not come from having a perfect plan. It comes from having strong values. Imagine walking through a dense forest at night. You cannot see the entire path. You do not know what lies ahead, but you carry a compass in your hand. As long as you trust that compass, you know you are moving in the right direction. Your virtues are that compass. Wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline guide your actions, even when the path is unclear. They give you direction, even when you cannot see the future. So the Stoic answer to feeling lost is not about finding the perfect career, the perfect relationship, or the perfect plan. It is about becoming the kind of person who can walk any path with strength and clarity. Instead of asking, "What should I do with my life?" the Stoics would ask, "What kind of person should I be today? Should you be honest today? Yes. Should you be kind today? Yes. Should you be disciplined today? Yes. Should you face your fears with courage? Yes." These questions are simple, but they are powerful, because they give you something you can act on immediately. You do not need to wait for the future. You do not need to solve your entire life. You only need to focus on the present moment. When you live this way, day after day, something remarkable happens. Your life begins to take shape, not according to someone else's expectations, but according to your own values. You begin to feel more stable, more grounded, more certain about who you are, even if you are not certain about where you are going. And that is the Stoic definition of direction. Not knowing every step of the journey, but knowing the kind of person you will be along the way. Because a person who lives with virtue is never truly lost. They carry their direction within them. No matter where life takes them, they always have their compass. And as long as they follow it, they will always be moving in the right direction.